Shadan Larki from Awards Buzz, joined by the Oscar-nominated VFX supervisor for Alien Romulus. Thank you so much for your time. I'm so grateful.
You're quite welcome.
Eric, well, I have to tell you, you have come back to the awards race after winning an Oscar for your work on The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. What was it like to sort of get that second nomination? We're big awards nerds here, so I'm always curious sort of what's it like to have your name called and to get to go on stage and all of those things.
Well, the first time was an unbelievable experience. Our movie came out late in December, and so the whole thing was kind of a whirlwind. And it was an unbelievable experience, that whole project. The Curious Case of Benjamin Button got 13 Academy Award nominations, and we were so thrilled for David and Sion and everyone who worked on that one. So that was an amazing project. But getting getting back there has been quite the journey. Every film you get onto, you want to do your best work possible, but it's got to be the right project at the right time, and then all the stars kind of have to line up. And all along you're still working every bit as hard as you always have been. So for this project to get back there has been unbelievable. The teams that worked on this movie are unbelievable. So many talented people from the practical side, from all the teams from Legacy, What a Workshop, Alec Studio Gillis from Alec Gillis and Pro Machina. So much talent that we got to then build on with the digital teams that it was definitely a privilege to get to work on this one because everyone's so excited. Everyone loves Alien.
Mm.
Um,
Well,
so it's
one
great.
thing that struck me about Alien Romulus is how sort of gritty and grounded, and I could tell maybe there's a little bit more practical VFX than what we're used to from other films. And in some ways, it does tie to Benjamin Button because that felt similar. What was it? What was your sort of general approach, and again to sort of achieve this sort of more grounded alien film?
Well, the key was Fetty's vision. Alien, he was returning to the horror genre. Um, and in order to get that kind of feeling, the actors need to be in the moment. They need to be scared. You need to be able to see the reactions. And so working with the actors was paramount to get them in that moment. So we had to do as much with the physical effects as possible, whether it be practical face huggers, around a face and interacting with them, or a xenomorph chest burster. It was super important, and then ultimately in the third act with the xenomorph and the offspring, that the actors had something to really play off of and get their best performances. And I think that was Fetty's drive, and I think the actors are very happy because he took that approach so that they knew what they were playing against and they could see it right there before their eyes.
Mhm. And let's talk about that because Alien Romulus again really does lean into the horror. I have to tell you, I only saw the first Alien this year when they did the re-release, and I was expecting, like to be very scared, and I wasn't. And I was like, wait, this isn't that much horror. But then I went to see Alien Romulus by myself, which was a huge mistake because I found it absolutely terrifying. So tell me about, working on those horror elements and designing these creatures to be as scary as possible and all of that.
Well, when I first saw Alien, I think I was 12 years old, and it scared the shit out of me. Um, because, films have come a long way since we saw that first chest burster. It was such a unique and first time seeing it on the big screen. It really shocked audiences, and it certainly shocked me, and I never forgot it. It gave me nightmares. And so Fetty, knowing that, obviously wants to do the same, and because the first film was more horror and the second film was a little bit more action, this film sits in between. So Fetty wanted both those kind of vibes. Um, so really, to answer your question, it's really Fetty's maniacal creative mind on how we shoot things and the reactions of the actors, and when we see them splattered with blood and their reaction, that's what gives us our reaction. And again, that's why it was so important for him to put as much practical in with them as possible to hopefully get them scared. I think there's a couple of scenes where like Isabella was clearly a little uncomfortable when the offspring leans in on her and its tongue kind of comes out. I mean, when you saw that on set, it was horrifying. And I think there's a lot of natural reaction going on in that scene of like, don't get too close to me because you didn't really want that too close to you. Robert did a fantastic job, and the makeup and everything Legacy brought was um, pretty great. So it's kind of that was the plan.
Eric, can you talk about the scope of how much you had to accomplish? Because I think, again, sometimes when you're just watching it in the theater, you sort of fall into it and you don't really think about, all the minute details. But would really like people to have a broader appreciation for just how much work went into Alien Romulus.
Well, the nuts and bolts of it, there's 1,400 visual effect shots, and
Wow.
that doesn't include obviously the stuff we got in camera, but that's the number of shots uh, for the total film. And I'm glad you feel that way because that's our ultimate goal is that you fall into the dream of the movie and you don't really think about it. It starts from the opening when we see the probe approach and we understand that it's picking up this asteroid that then it turns out has the xenomorph. So just creating and designing that whole sequence so that it tells a story and you go along and then ultimately we see the planet and they lift off and then we have to tell the story of them leaving this perfect place where they're pretty much indentured servitudes stuck with a planet that doesn't see the sun because of this multiple cloud layer, but also making it beautiful and scary. That's the goal. So when you see all of that play off, each one of those shots is an amazing amount of work and effort to make not only beautiful but make tell that story and keep it in the alien world. If they wanted each one of those space shots to look like a painting and be beautiful, but again be scary. So it's a lot of work, a lot of versions, a lot of iterations to get the look and feel just right, but it's also a lot of fun.
Speaking of a shot that felt like a painting to me, my favorite shot of the film was when the station is sort of crashing into the rings of the planet. It was one of those moments in the theater where I wish I could take a picture. Not that I encourage anyone to do that, but I wish I could take a picture of it and keep it. What went into that shot, or in sort of these other shots that you feel really stand out as sort of really massive cinematic achievements, in my opinion?
Well, thank you. Thank you. We had a wonderful group of concept artists that work on this film, but there was a painting that Alex Nice had done and that kind of showed that moment, and when those moments are in the script, you often get these wonderful concept paintings back. But when I saw it, I was like, holy crap, that is amazing. And there's a technical term that we use to describe when we actually hit that moment. And that's when you look at it in that dark theater when we're reviewing shots and if someone goes, holy shit, then that's when we know we've hit that mark. And that's what we got out of those shots. And that was the goal. The audience needs to feel like, holy shit, what do we just see? What's going on? And making the rings and the scale and scope feel like that. That was the goal. And it started from a beautiful concept painting.
Are there other shots that maybe are favorites of yours or something that stands out to you where you kind of look back and you go, "Oh, I can't believe we did that," you know?
As an artist, David Fincher once said to me, movies aren't finished; they're abandoned, and that's very true because as artists, you don't want to let go because there's always something you feel like you can do better, but because of time and money, they eventually do get ripped out of your hands and get thrust into theaters. So unfortunately, I only see the things that I wish we would have had more time on, could have been better. But as time goes on, and Fetty certainly mentioned it to me, and I watched the film, I'm very proud of the work that all the teams were able to put into the film because you can see the passion and the love that they put into it from the physical to the digital and everything in between. We used every technique on the planet from stop motion puppets to the latest machine learning, LED walls, miniatures, you name it. We threw everything at it. And I think that shows. So when all is said and done, if I've talked to a number of people that were Alien fans, and if they loved it, then I can be satisfied that we've done our jobs.
Hmm. And you mentioned sort of the blend of technologies and techniques. Can you tell me a little bit more about that, especially because you have had such a storied career? What has it been like to watch your craft evolve and then to be able to do a film like Alien Romulus where you are using, the latest and greatest?
Well, you're right. I mean, I kind of grew up with the very primitive early CG. I started out on Steven Spielberg's television show called Sequest, where we were literally being given storyboards where we would build texture, animate light, render out shots, and they went into the Sunday night version of it. You sometimes take one or two because that's all the time you were given. It was a fantastic learning environment, but now with the tools, you can do so much more. But the artistry hasn't changed. There's a lot of talk about people being afraid of AI replacing jobs, and it's so not the case. You still need the artists that can give you the beautiful work. Even if you have these programs that can spit out beautiful work, they're not, it might not be the look you're after, it may not be what is considered right for the film. So the artistry is still paramount. So the tools have changed over the years. They've gotten better. We can do faster iterations, rendering power is better. But the problem solving of how to shoot something to make it look real, that's everyday job of mine. And then the artistry is still paramount. So those two things haven't changed, but the tools have just made us to be able to do more faster. For iterations are more infinite, but the artistry is still paramount.
Eric, can you hear me? You froze for a second.
Oh, yeah. Am I back?
Yes, you're back. If you want to just repeat like the last 30 seconds or
Uh, well, I was just saying that, over time, we're able to do things faster, but that just means more iterations a lot of the time, more finesse, in search of perfection. But the artistry is still paramount. Those artists that do the work they're not going to be replaced. It's not going to be that easy. It just doesn't happen.
nor should it. And you mentioned something earlier that I want to come back to, which is that you saw the first Alien when you were 12 years old. So, what was it like for your inner 12-year-old to kind of be in this world and get to work on this film that, was so special to you at the time?
It was fantastic. I've had a couple of those experiences, first with Tron, certainly, and then with Terminator. But to work on this one was unbelievable. It's kind of coming full circle. A friend of mine reached out to me and said, "I remember seeing that movie with you in the theater," and you go, "Yeah, that's right." And you don't, when you're 12, 13, or 14, you don't think about, at least I didn't at that point, I'm going to someday be working on one of those. It just kind of happens throughout. And so, yeah, you're like, oh my God, when you're on the set, you're like, I'm working on an alien film. And then you got the onus on, oh shit, I'm working on an alien film. I know what that means. I
Yeah.
know what those first two films and even the third film, I mean, we have a lot of expectations on our shoulders, and we owe it to the fans and to Fetty and the studio to do our best work possible.
And I mean, that is part of the challenge. And you mentioned sort of 1,400 VFX shots. What's how do you obviously you have a whole team, but what did you find was the most challenging elements of just the sheer volume of work that had to go into it, and maybe what moments were the most difficult to finesse, would you say?
Well, Rook was probably the most technical challenging because we had to do so much up front. We had to build a puppet, it had to be sculpted to the likeness. Legacy did all of that. We had to record performance, so we had dialogue on set. The hardest thing about doing a digital characters is the vocal performance, and we've seen a lot of characters that are photoreal. That's tend where they fall apart, right? Even in Benjamin Button, we didn't have a lot of speaking shots. It's incredibly difficult. It pegs the meter. And so trying to come up with the approach to do that, because Rook is an exposition machine. He talks a lot, and he's telling a story of what went down. And that meant we had to do everything beforehand during principal photography with the playback, all the motions, and then in post do all the machine learning and adjustments to make that performance fit. So he probably took the most amount of time, but I mean, every character in this film was a challenge, whether it be a xenomorph, a facehugger, space, and how that looked, the offspring to keep in that world. So I always call it bite-sized chunks. Like sometimes something can be overwhelming for an artist, and I say, look, I just want you to worry about this one thing right now, and then we'll move on to the next little thing, and then they go, okay, we'll just focus on that little thing, and then it helps if you pass it on and delegate. But I'm always spinning those plates in my head because there's so much to focus on. But again, I also had so many amazingly talented people that came to work every day and brought it. And in some cases, they'd send me something. I just go wow, and then we'd show Fetty, and Fetty would just go wow. So that makes it help easy.
Is there anything that you are working on right now that you're able to share?
Not just yet.
Not just yet. Okay, I'll check back in with you. One thing that's I'm curious about just in hearing you speak is obviously you've done so many incredible things, so many iconic films. What is it about your craft that still excites you and makes you want to go to work every day? And how do you find sort of ways to keep it fresh and all of that?
For me, it's the artistry. Some visual effects supervisors are very technical. For me, it's about not just the technical, because certainly I love some of my favorite shots I've ever done are where people don't even realize we've done those shots, whether it be in Zodiac or Button or any of the Fincher films. Um, but for me, I love the artistry. I love getting excited about the world building and being able to come to work every day. I went to school to be a car designer, so I got to paint, draw, sketch, sculpt, and that doesn't go anywhere. So I like doing paint overs on shots and showing people how to get things done and really giving my artistic input to help make something beautiful. That's like any artist, that's where we what we enjoy, and then getting a cohesive piece up on the screen like Alien Romulus, then it's satisfying. Everything else is secondary. That's what's satisfying.
And speaking of world building, I mean, obviously the alien world is very iconic. How did you sort of bridge the new with the old and still manage to create something that was so unique but sort of exists within this broader cinematic language that was, still familiar to audiences?
Well, we had such great sets to work off of to start with, because it's really designed to be in the middle. Naaman Marshall, our production designer with Fetty, really picked some great choices from the Ron Cobb original kind of design as to where we were going in Aliens, to bridge the gap from Alien to Aliens. So I kind of took that as my cue with the space shots as well, with the look of Alien versus the look of Aliens, and then kind of mix that um, to get that kind of feel. But it it really stemmed from Gallo's photography, because that's where everything has to step back into. Everything we do digitally, practically, has to fit into his world. Otherwise, it doesn't feel the same. We've all seen films where we see the live action and then cut to the CG shots, and they don't look anything like the photography of the DP. And that bumps us a bit. So that becomes key. He gave us a beautiful palette to work with, and then we tried our best to keep everything in that palette.
Eric, is there anything that I haven't asked you about that you want to mention? I want to make sure you have the final word before I sign off with you.
I think that's everything. I mean, I think I've mentioned, how proud I am of all the teams, because the digital teams could not have done their jobs as well as they did if it wasn't for the analog teams and all the practical stuff we brought to the table. They kind of stood on their shoulders and worked, in harmony, which I'd love to see more of. I think that's really the way um, we push our craft, when we get the best of the best working together, and on a modest budget for a film like this as well. So yeah,
Yeah.
very, very proud of the teams.
Well, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for letting me pick your brain. I got so many good nuggets out of this that I'm gonna carry with me. So I really appreciate it. And I wish you the best of luck in March. Fingers crossed. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.